How's it going, guys? It's New Year's Eve, and I tested positive for COVID, so I'm not doing much. It's been a few days since I've known, actually. I don't know. I've thought about doing videos and stuff about it. Um, Maybe my emotional tone seems kind of like serious and down right now. It's not necessarily, actually. Maybe I feel a little slow or something, or kind of in my head. Maybe in my head is a better way of putting it. Got water now. If you watch my other podcasts, I talked about how unprofessional it is that I didn't have water, and I kind of ran out of steam and had to take my breath here and there. So, got my water now. Um, yeah. Uh, it's a weird time of year to be sick, but I feel okay, I guess. I think I'm past the worst of it. The worst of it, really, like if I was to put a scale from 1 to 10, the sickest I've ever been. What was the sickest I've ever been, actually? What would be the 10 for me? There was a time when I was a lot younger and I had something called walking pneumonia. I was really, really sick. I think I maybe lost 10 pounds too over the course of, I don't know how long. I was just kind of bedridden and had a fever all the time and was coughing a lot. Yeah. For some reason, looking back when I was that sick, I wasn't scared, but if I was that sick now and I knew that it was COVID, I probably would be pretty worried. Just because there's so much news out there about people dying and so much pressure not to get it or not get anyone else sick and so much pressure to get vaccinated and so much, I don't know. There's a lot of political fire underneath this and then a lot of pressure due to that and a lot of information that's designed to be scary. And that's true. It is designed to be scary. And some of it, I suppose, is scary. But, you know, the news can be a frustrating source of information because sometimes you don't really know what to trust and you don't know how much of it is just sort of emotionally fueled or profit fueled. And it makes, I don't know, it's disappointing when you can't necessarily trust the information fully when it should be the kind of information you can trust. But one thing I try to understand too is that the news is out there to, best case scenario, it's out there to appeal to the lowest common denominator of people. And I think a lot of people are more so inclined to respond to fear than just respond to something out of responsibility, if that makes sense. So, yeah. I don't know if any of that makes any sense. I'm just kind of going on like a vague rant about how I feel regarding the media and the way that they like to, I don't know, share information or something like that. But that being said, I'm pretty sure I have it. I mean, I tested positive for a reason, and yeah, I definitely had a little bit of a fever symptoms, I guess. Yeah, I could tell about my symptoms real quick. So I have a little bit of congestion, and I think I mentioned that in my last podcast. So it's possible that I had early symptoms kind of setting in or something, or it was just a coincidence. That's also possible. Um, and I had moments where I had a little bit of a headache. I had moments with a little bit of body ache, the kind that you would have if you had a fever or something like that. And I felt a little nauseous a few times. And then there's this sort of general sense of just not feeling great. Again, my symptoms were never so intense that I really thought I'm definitely sick. There was just moments where I'm thinking, am I? Because I had a couple days where I was kind of, I don't know, maybe just feeling down and I was inside a lot. And that can kind of make you not feel so well either. Um, so it was subtle enough for me to have a hard time distinguishing between actually being sick and not. But got tested, turns out I was, and I think I also mentioned in my last one that I'm not a super social guy, so my contact with people was very limited, if at all. So I didn't really have a list of people I needed to call. I wasn't attending parties and stuff. So yeah, the containment of it at least is very good, I would say. And my symptoms have been really mild, so I think I'm almost better. I'm actually towards the end of my isolation period anyway, so I should be able to go back out there and just do normal stuff relatively soon, like a few days from now. And that'll be nice. But yeah, I pretty much spent Christmas alone, and today's New Year's. Not that I would be doing, the typical New Year's stuff, and not that it's the time of year to really be doing that, right? But I suppose some people are, and there's a lot more people vaccinated. I mean, you're not really getting any judgment from me, whatever you do. But I wouldn't be doing that kind of thing anyway, partly because I don't know. It might be nice to, but what would I really want to do if it was New Year's? I'd want to be, I mean, it is New Year's Eve, so what would I want to do if it was New Year's Eve and there was no pandemic to consider? I don't know. I kind of want to be somewhere really different. Yeah, that'd be cool. Just a change of scenery. Haven't been able to travel like you could before the pandemic, and I think that's gotten to me a bit. Just before the pandemic, actually, the summer before it started, I did go to Italy and Scotland and New York. So I definitely traveled quite a lot for a few weeks. That was great, but that was my last really big sort of travel adventure. The rest of my time has felt like I've mostly been at home or in my town, and I guess I've taken some trips here and there, just a little bit out of state and stuff, but not to any place that really felt super new or that different. So I don't know. Change of scenery, I could use it for sure. Some kind of ruckus outside. I'm actually really not looking forward to trying to sleep tonight, and then there's going to be a bunch of fireworks going on. And the thing is, once they start, you don't really know when they're going to stop. You sort of have the moment of fireworks just going off, and that's when most of them are going off. But after that, they could just keep, you might get one every 10 or 20 or 30 minutes, or there's going to be that sort of rogue firework at 1 or 2 in the morning. A lot of times I don't care because I'm up at those hours anyway, but I just happen to be on a really early sleep schedule right now, and I'm just not doing much. So, yeah, just kind of passing the time, I guess, in a way. But I am thankful that I'm not having any concerning symptoms because, yeah, getting it was definitely kind of scary, and I think I'm glad that I got it now because it sort of feels like I got it and I'm okay, if that makes sense. So the weight on my shoulders of getting it just feels lifted in a way, and that's nice. Um, yeah, I'm not really sure what else there is to say at the moment. I just kind of wanted to tap in really quick and say something, and I guess I kind of wanted to do something for New Year's Eve, right? I'm not sure when I'll upload this. It might be by the New Year, and I'm sure for some of you guys listening, it's already the New Year right now. My friends in Japan and stuff, it's already what 2 in the morning or something into the New Year. So yeah, it's funny, huh? Let me know if you've ever gotten it or you've been afraid to get it, or yeah, I'm just curious what your relationship with it all is. Everyone's kind of handling it differently, but yeah, you sort of have these factions at the same time that sort of have a general similarity to how they interpret it or deal with it or believe it. Um, I've always considered myself to be somewhere in the middle, you know. I think that if you can get vaccinated, you probably should, but I'm not going to pressure you to do that. I think it's messed up that there is as much pressure and even, yeah, some legal enforcement here and there. But I guess some of that's also fair, and I don't know, it's a weird time, you know what I mean? I feel like if somebody feels a certain way about how things are being done and you disagree with them, it's kind of just fair to let them disagree because it's a weird time for everybody, and I think it affects people differently. And part of the reason people feel differently is because they feel affected differently. Some people weigh certain things more than other people weigh them, and sometimes it's because of a belief that they have, or sometimes it's because of how it affects them personally. So yeah, it's really hard to just come to an understanding and not get into fights about so many stuff, especially now. And it's really kind of disappointing to see how much I feel like the just the social quality between people has kind of deteriorated, you know? Yeah, the times have been so divisive. It's just been that way for a while. Like, there's just been so many divisive movements, you know? I mean, you can think back to like Trump getting elected and being president. That was a whole like probably 5 or so years of really intense division just, before he was president and during. You've had the Black Lives Movement just go on for so long and create all kinds of divisiveness. And yeah, I'm not saying that that movement was the problem. I'm just saying that that's like a checkpoint that represents a time when there was a lot of social divide. And now the vaccine stuff, the COVID stuff, a lot of toxic social divide based on that. What else was there? I'm trying to think back a little earlier. I remember I was driving through my town on the way to, was it on the way to meet? I actually think I passed this block several times. I haven't said too much about where I live and stuff, and maybe I will later. But the thing is, if I lived in like a huge town or something, maybe I wouldn't care as much. But mine feels a little bit more specific, so I guess I've been a little bit cautious about that or something. But I was driving through a town on the way to see some friends at a burger restaurant or whatever. This is I think this was sometime during the pandemic and sometime during the riots. One of the riots, I forget what riot it was. You know, there was the whole Breonna Taylor thing, and anyway, there was a group of people hanging outside of some block. I think they happened to be on the corner of some church or something. I don't think that they had anything to do with the church. It was just a kind of a visible street location. I think that's why they were there. But they were holding up these signs and they said "White silence kills." I just looked at that and I just thought, that's so stupid. That's like one of the dumbest things. And it's so obviously like a racist thing to say that. And you know that the people that are holding those signs think that they're calling out racism, but they're actually just being racist by saying white silence kills. It's so dumb. Yeah, I didn't like seeing that. I just sort of looked at it and felt, I don't know what I felt exactly, some kind of disappointment, or, I kind of rolled my eyes like, oh God, here we go again with people that think this way, but also think that this way is like the sort of forward way of thinking. Yeah. I think the idea that you're equating silence with murder is actually really just crazy. But also to make it like a racial thing, like specifically white people that are silent is murder, you know? That's the problem with a lot of today's times, right? Like the marketing of all these different ideas. You can only push an idea so far before it becomes about life or death, right? Because that's the level to which people might start taking something really seriously. So it's like, how close can you get to this idea that this concept or this way of thinking is a life or death matter? And I think we're at that point with a lot of stuff, right? Like you take the abortion issue, for example. You're either pro-choice or you're pro-life, right? So like people on the pro-life side, they just, I don't know. I feel like I hear the word baby killer thrown around a lot, which is just, I don't really know what the purpose of that is, but it becomes like a life or death thing. And it becomes that way with the COVID vaccine as well. Like save lives, get the vaccine or something like that. It becomes about life or death. There's just so many of these movements really seem to get to that point to be heard or to make their point. And yeah, I guess that explains something, right? Like that these topics always boil down to the life or death situation or way of looking at things, and then that's the will to which they stand behind these ideas, like that they are on the side of life and you are on the side of death. And that's part of why these conversations have gotten so divisive, is because it becomes about that. Um, and is it really, kind of? It kind of is. But yeah, it's such a weird place. It's a really weird time, and it's really hard to have conversations when people insist on looking at it that way. Because then you just start looking at other people as if they're not being responsible to the point that it's costing a bunch of lives or something. Yeah, I don't know. Once you can make something look like it's about that, I think it's really hard to come back from that conversation. And I don't know if the pressure of that really helps sway anybody one way or the other, you know? Because now, if you're on the other side of it and somebody thinks they're on the side of saving lives, then you're just being attacked for like not saving lives. But you never really felt that way in the first place, and you also feel like those people aren't considering the other side of it. I feel like it just pushes the divide more. It doesn't really help unite anybody. I think it just promotes more hate. I think that unity happens in the sense that there's already a clear divide between two sides, and the two sides both see each other as the problem. And the more extreme the conversations get from both sides, the more those sides feel like their side is their safety net, because the other side is just attacking them for their character, for their beliefs, or for their decisions. And I'll say this because I'm somewhere more in the middle with a lot of these conversations. It's tough to be in the middle too, because you kind of get kicked out. You get kicked out from both sides, right? If you see things from the middle, you're kind of a problem for both sides. So I think a lot of people also gravitate towards one side of the conversation as opposed to the other, because simply there's way more numbers on your side. If you sort of try to really think for yourself, which is what everybody tells you should do, but I really don't think people do, that's a much more difficult and lonely path, because you really have to have your own confidence, and you have to challenge both ideas. You have to have enough perspective on both sides to see where you actually fit. And I think a lot of people just have perspective from one side. They don't have perspective from the other side. So they don't really see things with a bird's eye view. They just see things from a very emotionally triggered or some kind of echo chamber type of perspective. So that sucks too, because I know that's how it is. I know that's how it is for a lot of people, and it's disappointing to think that so many people fall into that same trap. And yeah, that really kind of bums me out. Man, the tone of this one is down, isn't it? This whole little podcast thing. I don't even know if I'm going to call this a podcast. I'm just sort of giving some kind of update. I didn't really sit down and have like a plan of things to talk about. I thought about sitting down. It's interesting. Sometimes I just know that I have a lot to talk about when I sit down. And this wasn't necessarily one of those times. But I guess I just wasn't quite feeling it, and so I didn't. But I was also a bit sick and down, and I was a little bit stuck on what to talk about. But even on those days, I still want to get myself to do this, because I think that's good for me. One of the changes I'm trying to make is to not rely on my emotions so much to be in sync with my objectives. Let that sink in for a second, because that's really, really important, especially if you're an entrepreneur of any kind, or you have big ambitions of any kind. If you rely on your emotions to be the indicator of what you should do, like if your emotions are your source of confidence, or your emotions are your sense of motivation, you are relying on a completely just unpredictable resource of that kind of energy, because you don't know how you're going to feel some days, you know? Sometimes you hear good news and you're still depressed. Sometimes you hear good news and it totally picks you up, and or other days you're indifferent. Like there's no consistency with your mood, you know? You cannot rely on your emotions. They're like the weather. They just, these storms, they come and go, and sometimes you think you can predict them, but you can't. Sometimes they last a lot longer than you thought, or they don't. And yeah, sometimes something completely different comes up. And yeah, a lot of the times, your emotional response to things aren't necessarily the one that you want, right? Yeah. You get my point. I know you get this. You guys are human. You guys are probably mature enough to at least have experienced a wide range of emotions, and then understand that they're not always in line with what's going on, or definitely not always working in your favor. Sorry, that's COVID in my throat. Yeah, so I'm just trying to get better at not being in the mood sometimes to do things that I think I should or need to do. And that's where I'm at with my growth right now as a person, and whatever else that means. Yeah. Man, I can tell I kind of look like shit a little bit. Just a little bit. You can hear it in my voice a little bit, and yeah, I don't know, a little tired. A little groggy, a little down. But I'm better now than I was a few days ago. The day after Christmas, the day of Christmas, those were not happy days. Those are sad days. And yeah, if I'm feeling down, I gotta just kind of let it go, because I can't expect myself to be in a great mood when I tested positive and I'm isolating as much as I am because of the positive tests. And I think it's the contrast of my isolation with the fact that it's kind of a holiday, the kind of holiday where people get together and they party and stuff. And like I said, it's not really my thing to do that generally. I do like to do that if it's the right crowd of people sometimes, but it's hard for me to find the right crowd of people. There's really only a small select few people that I'd really like to like hang out with and spend that kind of time with. And even if we did, I don't know if that's what I'd want to do. But yeah, yeah, it's fine. It's just another day. I don't I don't need today to be the day that I have some kind of celebration or something. I actually got really good and important news a couple of days ago. Nothing to do with my COVID or anything, but uh, yeah, I can't really talk about it actually, but it was something I've been waiting to hear for a long time, and I wasn't sure that I would, and I have a lot of stuff kind of weighing on that decision or that outcome, and it turns out that it's going to go the way that I wanted it to or needed it to move forward with some stuff, and that was so important for me. But when I heard the news, I was kind of like, okay. I didn't really feel ecstatic or anything. Just felt kind of indifferent. Sometimes that can bring you down too. You hear something that you think should change your mood or have a really great impact on your mood, and then it doesn't. You're just like, oh, what's wrong with me, you know? But I'm not really letting it get in my head like that. I've had days where it does, though, you know? I've had days where it does, and I probably will sometime again in the future because I'm human and we're all stupid, partly because of our unpredictable emotions. But, yeah, you got to be above your feelings sometimes. That's kind of the point of what I'm saying. You can't always be in the mood to do what you got to do. Yeah. I mean, sometimes you just really have to do the thing. You're in a situation where, however you feel about it, it doesn't matter. But sometimes you just have these ambitions or dreams or something, and it's really on you to make time or make that a priority. It's not, you know, it's just not the same as some other priorities. Some other priorities just obviously they kind of matter more in a way that you respect. Like if you have a kid and the kid's really hungry or something, then you're going to find a way to feed the kid, you know? But sometimes it's like you have these dreams and you just feel like, this one step towards that dream can wait. Or maybe this one step isn't actually that important, or you just don't really feel like it, you know what I mean? So, yeah. Hope that makes sense. I think it does. Anyway, I guess I'm gonna wrap this one up. I don't know how long it's been, but I think I said what I needed to say. And yeah, hopefully the tone of this wasn't so down for you. Um, but it is what it is, as I say sometimes. Oh yeah, I came up with a name for this podcast. At least for now, I'm just gonna call it "Take It In." And this is exactly why, because this is one of those days where um, I'm just kind of taking it in, just taking it all in. And maybe I need to go outside and just do that. Um, Probably just go in my backyard or something and enjoy the sunlight, because I'm still kind of isolating. But yeah, just take it in. It's a good thing to do from time to time, and maybe this podcast can be somewhat of a checkpoint for me and for you to do that. Just consider all the stuff if that's what you need to do or you are doing, and just take it in and yeah, let it out or move on or embrace it, whatever you got to do. But I think one of the first steps to processing that kind of thing is taking it in. So go ahead and do that. It's a new year. Take it in. 2021 is behind us. Take it in. It's not to say that, the 1st of January is literally not going to fall in line with wherever the end of the year picked off, but it is a new year, and that can be a clean slate for some people. I don't know what it's going to be for me. I have some goals. I've actually gained a little bit of weight that I'm not stoked about, and that's always something I'm a little hesitant to talk about because I know that I'm in really good shape, and I am. But as an athletic person, I think my standards for my fitness are higher than the average person. So it's like every time I open up about my fitness standards and how I feel about where I'm at, a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're fine," and that actually really bothers me because it's like, okay, I know that I'm fine, but I want to be better. So can you stop talking me out of wanting to be better? And they often respond to you from some angle like you have an eating disorder or something because maybe I want to watch what I eat more, you know? So, yeah, it can be really frustrating. Um, but I do have some weight loss goals and I have some muscle goals too. I should put on a little bit more muscle, lose a little bit of weight, put on a little more muscle. Ultimately, it's about like having better discipline when it comes to when I eat or what I eat. And I'm already really good, but I think when it comes to the time or the quantity, I can still do a little too much. My diet, like nutritionally, is actually phenomenally good. I've cleaned up my diet so much. I have so many fun and healthy like keto options for when I'm eating keto, but I still eat apples and stuff. Like for example, as healthy as I eat, I bought a big bag of mangoes. It's like, well, I don't know how big this looks on camera, but I mean it's a pretty huge bag of mangoes and a big bag of dried mangoes, and I ate like two-thirds of the, or maybe three-fourths of the bag in about 24 hours. And just to give you a perspective of that, it's like I think the whole bag of mangoes has about maybe 270 grams of sugar, which is so much sugar. It's so much. It is like fruit sugar, and it's, bound with the fibers of the fruit and stuff, so it's not the same as like that many grams of sugar and like refined and processed sugars. It's not the same. Um, it's also not the same kind of sugars because it's coming from fruit, and depending on the fruit, you got like fructose and whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's like too much. That's too much. I don't care how healthy you are. If you're eating an entire giant bag of mangoes and there's like 240 grams of sugar in there, that's probably too much. And maybe you got to watch your eating a little bit, right? So that's where I'm coming from. People don't realize that I'll do that sometimes. And before I really had a healthy diet, I would eat like, I would have days where I'd go to the store and buy an Oreo ice cream cake that was maybe this big, and I would eat maybe half of it or maybe two-thirds of it in a day. In a day. That's a cake for like a family, an ice cream cake. There's all kinds of frosting on it, and it's just loaded with sugar. And I would eat half or two-thirds of that in a day. And then the next day, I would think to myself, I should probably just finish that. Otherwise, I'm just gonna keep eating that, And it's like I'm gonna finish it anyway. Why don't I just get rid of it now? And I can start working on, kind of fixing up my diet or working off this food sooner rather than later. So that's what I would do. About 24 hours, maybe 36 hours or something. I would eat an entire Oreo cookie cake to myself. So that's where I'm coming from. That's the kind of eater that I was. So while I am still that kind of eater, I've cleaned up the kind of food that I eat a lot. But I've basically found a lot of healthy alternatives to still satisfy that part of me that likes to eat that way and likes to eat entire Oreo cakes and stuff. So I really just want to watch the quantity of what I eat. I've really ironed things out on the quality side. I'll say that. But the quantity is still a factor for me. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I hope you guys can just respect that and not come at me implying that I have some kind of eating a disorder. That would just disappoint me if somebody thinks that. That's not the case. That's not where I'm coming from. I just have fitness goals, and they're a little bit further away than where I am now, and that's it. It's that simple. It's just about being in better health and being in better emotional control with what I eat. It comes down to that same thing about emotional state and impulses and all that stuff, because I give into that a little bit too much when I eat sometimes. And it's fine to do that from time to time, but if you do that every day for weeks and weeks and weeks, which I kind of feel like I have, yeah, maybe that's not so great, but that depends on what your goals are and where your health is at. And my health is great, but my goals are a little bit higher than I'm at right now. So it's about doing that. So I mean, my New Year's is going to be something about that, and it's going to be about somehow being on my phone less. I've talked about phone addiction a little bit, and I was doing really well for a few weeks on my phone. I was on it like less than an hour a day, minus a couple of apps that I decided not to track. But my net time, I would say, was under an hour most days for a few weeks, and that was great. But I'm back to, I don't know, too much time, whatever that is. So better health and less phone time, and I think the combination of those two things would just be better for my well-being overall. So yeah, here's to a new year, and let me know what some of your goals are in the new year. I'm curious what your goals are, and if you want to elaborate on how you think you'll actually achieve those goals or what you think your challenges will be towards achieving those goals, let me know that too, because I've been on I've been on a journey with a friend of mine. He and I set up challenges for each other, and we hold each other accountable, and we've been doing that for years now. So we actually have a lot of perspective, I would say, on what it's like to set goals and follow them, and what the mentality is when you succeed or when you fail, and also what the mentality is like going into picking goals for yourself and sticking with them and designing a plan for yourself. So I've got some experience with that as well as a friend of mine, and I might have him on the podcast sometime soon. He's a good dude. Uh, but yeah, new year. Maybe that's good stuff to talk about and think about. So yeah, just trying to stay positive. Some kind of joke about, me being COVID positive. But yeah, trying to stay positive. But not with COVID for too long. Although I think you do for like 90 days after testing positive, you'll still test positive for a few months. Just for something to know. Anyway, yeah, I'll leave it at that. Happy New Year. And I'll see you in the comments and a future video. Thanks for watching.